everyone, welcome back to Scarecrow Joe's studio and the paper mache Krampus bust tutorial. In this segment, which is part 2, I will show you how to create and attach the horns and the ears. So without further ado, let's get right down to it. Before I begin on the horns, I just wanted to give you a look at the bust and how it looks now that I've put the layers of strip mache on this. So I put a couple of layers, like 2 layers of strip mache on the shoulder area and the body. And then the rest of it, I just put 1 layer. So, and that's really all you need. Okay, you guys by now know how much I love templates. So what I have here in front of you are 2 horn-shaped templates that I've used on a couple of different busts. So here's one of them, and then here is another one. This one's much larger, thicker, fatter. So this is going to be too big, so I'm not going to use this one. I think this one's going to be perfect for what I want to do here. So on some corrugated cardboard, I'm going to trace out 2 of them. I want to have 2 horns, so I'm going to trace out 2 of them on my corrugated cardboard. And then I'll go ahead and, with my utility blade, cut both of them out. Okay, I have my horns cut out. And like I was saying, you can do any kind of shape of horn that you want. You don't have to follow every single step that I'm doing. Look at pictures of horns, animals with horns, different things like that. Pick a pattern or a shape of a horn that you like. And what I suggest is creating a template so that you can reuse them create them on a piece of paper, or I like to use newspaper, and save them for other projects. If you're planning on doing any other projects that require horns. I'm done with these, so I'm going to go ahead and put them back into my folder here of armature templates. Okay, now that I have the basic shape of the horns, set those aside. And what I want to do is take some thin, flexible cardboard, like from a cereal box, something like that. And I'm going to cut some strips out of it, because this is a pretty easy way on how to make your horns 3-dimensional. Just cutting those ends off. Easiest way to do this, instead of trying to get them all the same size, because you kind of do, you want them to all be the same size. Just take a ruler. So I'm going to say, let's do a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to mark every 1/2 inch. Nothing in this tutorial or any tutorial that I create needs to be perfect. Don't get hung up on that. But this is the easiest way to make sure that you have them all relatively the same width. The length doesn't really matter, because you're going to end up cutting the length. You're going to want a few of these, so cut a few of them. Alright, I've got my hot glue gun heating up. You will need a hot glue gun and some glue sticks for this. And so what I'm going to do is, on each one of these horns and on both sides, just making a mark down the middle. Again, doesn't need to be perfect. It's just the armature for the horns. There are a lot of different ways to make horns. This is just the way that I like to make them. So if you've made horns in the past and you have a way that worked out really well for you, continue using that method. I have my marks down the center on both sides of my horns. To make them three-dimensional, again, like I said, we're going to do these on both sides. So we're going to cut and glue the thin flexible cardboard right around that line. I'm going to cut these in half, just because I don't want to have to sit at an awkward angle way over here and try to hold them while they start to cool and dry in place. So make it easier on yourself. We cut them in half. I'm going to need more strips than this, and you will too. This is going to be good for maybe 1.5 of the horns. So I'll need to cut some more strips, possibly. Alright, my glue gun is fired up and ready to go. I'm just going to start on one end and squirt in a good thick line of hot glue. Take one piece of my thin flexible cardboard and glue it in place, and this is what you're going to want to do all the way down to basically the tip of your to the tip of the horn. As you can see right here, I didn't draw the line all the way down there. I don't really need to draw a line all the way down there. So take those strips all the way down to the point here, and then once these set up and cool for you, go ahead, do the other side the same way, and do your other horn the same way. Alright, I have both sides of my horns, on both of my horns, completed there with those strips. As you can see, I do have on the edge here the tip. I'm just going to take my scissors and trim that off. The other one as well, because they're hanging over, and I don't need that. So okay, now I want to taper these just a little bit at the edge here, so that it'll come down into more of a point. It'll be a little bit easier to shape and sculpt out if it's shaped a little bit. So what I'm going to do is on the inside of the horn here, and this is the tip. So here's the whole horn. This is the base or the bottom. This is the tip. So I want to kind of taper the tip down. So I'm going to go from here, so the inside part, and I just want to taper. So start almost right up to the edge, basically, and just come down and gradually just taper it off like that. Do the other side as well. So something like that, where I took my marker and I kind of just went from the edge and tapered. So I want to cut that. So I'm going to go ahead with my scissors and just trim that. And there you go. Doesn't need to be perfect. Just going to trim that side just a little bit. So now we have a nice tapered end of our horn. Going to do the same thing with the other one. I have two tapered horns. Kind of line them up, make sure they're, relatively even. Again, perfection is not something that you need to be concerned about with these at all. Couple more things. So, on your thin flexible cardboard, you're going to need to cut out a strip that's at least 2 inches wide. So go with 2 inches wide, and you want the strip basically to be able to wrap around from the bottom. so the very bottom of the horn. And we're going to wrap this around it, just like that. So that it's flush to the bottom of your cardboard, the bottom of the horn here. And just kind of holding it in place. I'm going to take my scissors and just cut the excess off. Holding it in place from where I made that cut so it kind of stays together on the edge, I'm just going to pull that apart. I've got my finger right here, so I'm just going to take my marker. I'm going to make a mark right across here. And then I'm going to go in with my hot glue, and on that lower edge underneath my mark, I'm going to put in a bunch of hot glue. Very carefully, I'm going to take this and glue it into place. I'm moving it down because I realize that this part up here is a little thicker. Not a big deal, but you want your bottom edge to be flush, pretty much flush. So you don't want it hanging over like up here. It's fine up here on the top part, not a big deal. But down here you do want it flush. So this is going to take a couple of minutes here. Or, well, not a couple of minutes, but at least, you know, I'm going to hold it for a minute until it dries. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the same thing for the other horn. Okay, I have both of my little cardboard pieces cut out, glued together. And I'm ready to attach these to the bottom of the horn. They already fit pretty well. So the only thing that I want to do here, on the bottom where the cardboard makes the connection, I'm just squirting a little bit of hot glue in there. And on the, I'm going to do the same for the top, just where it makes the connection. Just for a little added contact with some adhesive. Base of my horns with those little cardboard pieces, and by the way, that was, again, flexible, thin flexible cardboard that I used on them. So those are both glued in place. And we're going to move on here and finish up the armature part of our horns. I do want to mention, it's always a good idea, after you glue on your thin flexible pieces of cardboard on each side of the horns, go in around the edge, the inside edge, or the outside edges and the inside edges. Put another line of hot glue around. It's not going to hurt, and then, you know, it'll ensure that they're not going to be knocked off. You're going to need some masking tape for this. You know, you could take thin pieces of flexible cardboard and cut them and do the same thing here, and you can follow all the way up. But that's kind of a pain in the butt, and I just have a better method for it. Basically, it's using masking tape to go ahead and block in the open spaces and create a surface area. So, starting from the wide end here, I'm going to take my masking tape and kind of do a little bit of a candy caning type of an effect. So I'm just sort of candy caning as I go down. And then once I reach a certain spot, I'm going to come back up. You're gonna need a lot of masking tape, so make sure that you do have at least the whole roll. And this is a 1-inch wide masking tape. That's all you need. I'm gonna continue on doing the same thing all the way down this horn and this one as well. Horns are ready for me to insert into the head of the bust. But let's take a closer look at these real quick. Using this effect with the thin flexible cardboard, gluing those pieces onto the corrugated cardboard, and then using the candy cane technique where you're just wrapping around where it overlaps with the masking tape, and you kind of double back on it. It's quick, it's easy. You have surface area here on which to not only apply your strip mache, so your newspaper strips dipped in paste, which we're going to do. And then once that dries, you're going to have a nice solid surface in which to sculpt the details into your horns. The shape is, it's an automatic, like, interesting shape. It's not completely round. It has these angles and edges, and I really like this effect. If you don't like this, where you want them to be completely round, that's perfectly fine too. You're just going to have to, when you go in the sculpting phase on your horns, you're going to have to bulk up just a little bit more clay to round them out. So you could still use this technique even if you want round horns. But this is pretty cool. I like this. I have my bust here, and it's time to insert them. So I think I want them, I don't want them straight back like that. I don't want them too close together. That looks kind of cool with them kind of angled out a little bit. I like that. And then I want it towards up front of the front of the head. So basically something like that. So I have my position in mind. I'm going to take my black Sharpie here. I'm going to position one of the horns on pretty much where I want them to be, and just take my marker and I'm just going to mark around. Doesn't need to be perfect. I'll do the same for the other horn on this side. Okay, so where I've made those marks on each side here, I'm going to go ahead and take my blade, and I want to cut in around those areas because I want to insert those horns actually into this armature so that I really know that they're going to be stuck in there instead of just gluing straight onto the armature. It's not going to be very strong, so I want to sink them down into that armature. So I'm going to go ahead and cut, and don't forget that there is foam in here. So I have to cut through the strip mache, which is no big deal because it is pretty thin. It is only one layer of strip mache, a couple layers, but I got to cut through this. I gotta cut through this styrofoam as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and struggle with that off camera. Do both sides, and I'm just gonna cut in there so I can sink those horns down in there. All right, horns are in position. They are not glued in yet. I'm just kind of looking at them. I want to make sure that they're even, and they are relatively even. And I dug into the areas. Let me give you a look. So I dug into that foam in the basic shape of the horn so that I can sink them in there. That's going to give it a lot, make it a lot sturdier. Next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and take my hot glue, and I'm going to glue these in all the way around. I'm going to use quite a bit of hot glue for that. All right, horns are hot glued in place. I got a bunch of hot glue strings all over. Looks pretty good. I like the placement. I love the design element of it, the shapes. It's going to be awesome. They're slightly uneven. That's okay. If you look at animals who have horns, you know, because it's organic, they're never completely symmetrical. So if yours is a little off kilter, don't worry about it. Otherwise, you're going to take a lot of time trying to make them perfect. But for the most part, my edges are in line with each other. It's just this one's a little higher than the other. Not a big deal. We're going to move on to ears now. And as usual, I have an ear template that I first drew out onto a piece of newspaper. And then I cut that out. And then I traced that pattern onto, this is corrugated cardboard. You do want the thicker corrugated cardboard for this. So I traced 2 of them out on the corrugated cardboard. This little area right here, normally I would insert the cardboard, just like I did with the horns. I would insert this area into the head where the ears would be. But in this case, I'm not going to, and I'll show you that when we get to gluing them on. But that's why I have this mark here. It's an indication or a reminder that much of it would normally be inserted into the armature. So I have these drawn out. And these could actually, okay, I'm using this shape for an ear, but, you know, you could also use the same shape for a small set of horns. So I'm going to set that aside. Off camera, I'm going to go ahead and cut these out. All right, I have my ears out of corrugated cardboard. And if you recall, I don't know if you do or not, but this head model, this styrofoam head, did have an indication of an ear. So you could see it here. It's sticking out just a little bit. So I'm gonna use that as sort of a platform to just hot glue my ears on. But I don't want to hot glue them like straight out, like straight up and down like that. I'm going to curve it a little bit. On the lower edge, there's a fold. So in the natural corrugation, it helps you to make just a little fold. But when I have the ear on there flush up against this ear form, I'm just taking my thumb and I'm bending it forward. Same on the other side. And I know this looks pretty funny right now, but it won't when we're all done, I promise you. Before I just glue those on like that, I want to kind of shape them just a little bit. So again, the corrugation will naturally let you bend. So I'm just gonna give them just a little bit of a shape. To make these just a little bit stronger, and after I attach them, I'm going to strip mache. I'm going to strip mache them right along with the horns. But I want to put some masking tape. I don't need to put masking tape down here where it's going to be glued on, but I just want to take some masking tape and wrap it around both of my ears, just to give it a little more support. Okay, these are wrapped in some masking tape, and I am ready to hot glue them on. I don't need to make any marks because I'm using that ear that's already on there as a reference. So I'm just going to go all the way to the bottom. I'll make a mark for you so it's easier for you to see, but this is the edge of that ear. And I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to put some hot glue on the bottom piece of my cardboard there. And right at the bottom of the ear, I'm going to press that on. I'm going to hold it towards me because I want the angle to be right. If you're looking at it straight on like this, you're getting, you know, that profile, but you also want to look at it straight on like this so you know where it's lined up. I'm going to do the same thing with the other ear. All right, so just another word on the horns here. If you wanted to create a different type of horn or a different shape of a horn, you could totally do that using the same techniques that I showed you in this tutorial. For instance, the horns on this bust are curved. So all you do is you pick a pattern, trace it out. It could be curved, it could be straight, whatever shape that you want. Trace it out onto your corrugated cardboard, cut that out, and just follow the exact same steps as I showed you, and you can make any type of a horn that you want in any way, shape, or form. When you're applying your strip mache to your horns and your ears, you will want to apply at least 3-4 layers to the horns and at least 3 to 4 layers onto the ears. Let them dry completely, and when we come back, we're going to start laying on some clay and start sculpting. And I will also, in the next section of this tutorial, attempt to use the thermoplastic pellets to create the teeth and the eyes. So we'll see how that goes, because as you can see, this is unopened. I haven't touched it, and I've never used these before. So it's going to be really interesting. But until then, as always, I thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.